People say if you want to understand a city, don't look at it in the morning. Morning is when everyone is performing. People put on neat clothes, rush through a cup of coffee, squeeze through the noise of traffic, and try to become a stronger version of themselves. But 5 p.m. is different. 5 p.m. is when the masks begin to get tired. It's when men loosen the faded sun jackets hanging around their necks. Office girls lean their heads against the red light, staring blankly somewhere between the endless stream of traffic. Motorbike drivers light their third cigarette of the day, and children wait for that familiar call, dinner's ready. If the morning is ambition, then dusk is the truth. And Hanoi, in that moment, becomes beautiful in a dangerous way. I don't know when I became obsessed with the light at 5 p.m. Maybe from my high school days, riding around the city just to feel the wind. Or maybe from the first time I realized this city isn't beautiful when you try to check in and photograph it. It's beautiful when you're tired, when you no longer feel the need to prove anything. Today, I'm not your tour guide. No top destinations, no reviews, no history lessons, no checklist of places you must visit in Hanoi. I just want to take you for a ride. 17 kilometers around West Lake, a loop with no destination. Sounds meaningless, doesn't it? But the older I get, the more I realize the things that save us from exhaustion are often the things that serve no purpose at all. A motorbike ride, a gust of wind, an old song playing as the sky turns dim, or simply the feeling of riding without anyone asking, "Where are you going?" SFX, the engine stretches into the wind. The breeze grows louder. At this hour, West Lake feels like a giant mirror reflecting the entire mood of the city. The water burns red, as if someone poured buckets of orange paint across its surface. Light slips through the rows of trees, across rearview mirrors, and onto the sweat on people's foreheads. The sun doesn't set normally here. It performs. It drags out its final moments like an artist refusing to leave the stage. There are days when I ride around the lake and fail to capture a single decent shot. But strangely, I still come back. Maybe because what I'm searching for isn't beautiful scenery. Maybe I'm just searching for the feeling that I can still feel something at all. There's something strangely beautiful about West Lake. No matter how fast or slow you ride, eventually, you end up back where you started. Sounds a lot like life. I used to think movement meant progress. The faster you moved, the better. The busier you were, the more valuable you became. But there were years when I kept running without stopping, yet somehow still felt completely stuck. My head was always full of noise. Messages, deadlines, algorithms, views, everything that makes people believe that if they slow down for even a moment, they'll be left behind. Until I started riding around Westlake in the late afternoon. Not to go anywhere, just to ride. And strangely enough, those meaningless loops saved me from burnout more than any vacation ever could. SFX, a bicycle glides past. Look at the cyclists beside me. A middle-aged man in an old sports jacket pedals so slowly it feels like the bike might tip over. A group of students bursts into laughter because someone almost hit a pothole. An older foreign man with silver hair rides past wearing headphones, his face completely relaxed, as if he's lived here forever. No one is racing anyone. In most cities, exercise is tied to achievement. How many calories burned? How many kilometers completed? How many minutes per kilometer? But here, many people cycle simply to release the weight of a long day from their bodies. If you look closely, you'll notice it. Someone just got off work. Someone just had an argument. Someone is heartbroken. Someone doesn't even know why they feel sad, only that their chest feels heavy like it's filled with stones. So they ride. Like a survival instinct. SFX, wind hits the microphone harder. One time, I stopped for iced tea by the lake. An older man sitting beside me asked, "Making a film?" I said, "Yeah." He smiled. "I come sit here every afternoon. Don't really do anything." Then he went quiet. A few moments later, he added, "Feels suffocating at home." I still remember that sentence. Feels suffocating at home. Not because the house is small, but because life sometimes leaves people with no space left to breathe mentally. So they search for the lake. They search for the wind. They search for a road long enough for their minds to finally slow down. SFX, soft brake sound. When you ride around this lake at about 30 kilometers per hour, the city begins to distort. The lights stretch into glowing trails. People's voices dissolve into distant background noise. Buildings drift past like memories. You no longer feel like you're part of traffic. You become part of the flow, a small dot floating through the red light of a Hanoi sunset. Westlake is a stage without a script. No one knows what the person sitting beside them is going through. But strangely, everyone exists next to each other in complete peace. An old man leans against the railing with both hands behind his back. He stares at the sunset for so long that I start wondering whether he's looking at the scenery, or at a piece of his youth still trapped somewhere inside this golden light. A young couple sits on a bench. They don't talk much. They don't even look at each other. They simply look out toward the water together. I used to think love had to be loud to be memorable, but the older I get, the more I realize the strongest relationships are often very quiet. The kind where two people can sit beside each other for hours without worrying about what to say next. SFX, a dog barking in the distance. A woman selling drinks slowly waves a handheld fan. She's probably been sitting here for decades. Maybe she has never once thought this place was poetic the way tourists describe it. To her, this is simply where she makes a living. And somehow, that's exactly what makes this city feel real. Hanoi isn't beautiful because it's perfect. It's beautiful because everything is alive. The tiny plastic stools, the cracks running through the sidewalks, the roadside tea stalls that look like they could collapse at any moment, people calling out to each other across the street, the smell of charcoal from grilled corn carts, the scent of the lake, the smell of trees after a brutally hot day. Everything blends together into a feeling that's hard to explain. It isn't luxurious. It isn't cinematic in a polished way, but it has a soul. And sometimes, the camera can't capture that. A little boy rides by on his bicycle, shouting with excitement. I instinctively swing the camera toward him. And suddenly, I remember my own childhood. Back then, happiness was simple. All you needed was permission to stay outside a little later in the evening. A wind strong enough to make your shirt swell behind your back. Nobody thought about the future. Nobody was afraid of falling behind. Adults seem to forget that feeling very quickly. Maybe that's why I love filming ordinary moments more than beautiful scenery. Because that's when people are most real. No posing. No trying to seem interesting. Just living. And then, that moment finally comes. The sun disappears. Not dramatically like in the movies. It simply sinks away, like a very quiet sigh. The orange-red sky slowly fades into deep purple. The people by the lake become silhouettes. Streetlights flicker on. Music from roadside cafes starts to sound clearer. And Hanoi steps into its night shift. This has always been my favorite transition, because the city feels like it's floating between two worlds. No longer daytime, but not fully belonging to the night yet. SFX, the clicking sound of a turn signal. There were days when I rode around the lake after going through a really difficult time. Work wasn't going well. My mind felt completely tangled. Life felt like it was dragging me across the ground. But somehow, after a few loops around the lake, feeling the wind hit my face, watching the lights reflect on the water, everything didn't exactly disappear. It just became smaller. Small enough for me to breathe again. And sometimes, that's enough. People often think peace has to exist somewhere far away. A mountain town, a deserted beach, a long journey far from home. But maybe real peace is simply those few moments when you stop fighting life. A motorbike ride, a gust of wind pushing against you, a burning red sunset, a moment where you dare to observe instead of rushing past everything. SFX, the motorbike slows down and finally stops. 17 kilometers completed. One loop finished. But maybe tomorrow, or next week, I'll come back here again. The same road, the same lake, the same light. Because some places don't heal you with answers. They quietly remind you that you're still alive. And sometimes, that alone is enough to keep going for one more day. I'll see you again on another journey, when the light begins telling stories once more.